Welcome to Aware. We are dedicated to communicating information that inspires your positive growth and change. Are you interested in a peaceful planet? Are you interested in optimal health? Are you living with purpose? Are you enjoying your life? We realize each person can make a difference, and our mission is to empower your awareness. The choices that you make in every moment shape your life, and we encourage you to realize that you have your own answers and to always listen to your own truth. We invite you to stay aware. Hello and welcome to the Aware Show. I am Lisa Garr, and I'm always so honored to be here with you and to be communicating information that inspires our positive growth, our change, whatever it is that we want to focus on in our lives. And this show is really pretty much like setting an intention. When you listen to shows like this and you hear something that resonates with you, set an intention of something that you want to create going forward, if that makes that difference for you in your life. You can also always listen to the Aware Show on demand on our podcast. And anywhere you listen to podcasts, just go to the Aware Show. You can see our many shows there. We've been broadcasting for many years, like 20. And we're just excited to have you join us on our podcast. So this is one of my favorite topics because, as you know, I've spoken about doing story coaching in the past, and I have always been a fan of people's stories. And one of the through lines that I find with particularly women all over the world, no matter what culture or what area they are from on this planet, they have two main through lines of an issue. One is having their voice heard, and the other one is speaking up in the first place. And they're actually mutually exclusive. Speaking up and using your voice takes an enormous amount of courage to even have that level of permission, to not be allow things to happen or be said around you that are not okay with you, to really speak up first. And then exclusive of that is to actually not be afraid when you are heard. They are very different things. And we are going to be talking about that today with a woman who actually wrote a book on this whole incredible topic, which I think is so great. And it's Does My Voice Matter? Yes, it's a guide to finding your voice. Cynthia James is my guest. She has an incredible career as a transformational specialist, as both an author with 3 award-winning and best-selling books, and as a gifted musical performer. She is a incredible colleague, and I'm so grateful to have you join me today, Cynthia. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be with you. You look beautiful, by the way.
Oh, you too. We both wore red. So did you understand what I was talking about earlier about that being kind of a mutually exclusive thing? People don't usually understand the nuance of using our voice and then being terrified of it feeling heard.
Well, yeah, when you said, especially women, one of the things that's very interesting to me is that women were still property until the early 1900s. And so bringing our voices, was all about taking care of the home and taking care of our children, not expressing our needs, bringing our gifts, wanting to make a difference, wanting to be heard. And so I think we are still dealing with the enculturation of that even today. Well, can we stand up? Can we step out without some kind of punishment or retribution of some kind? Can we bring our voices? Is it okay?
Actually, could you talk a little bit about that and the history of women? Because we really, truly did just get our voices heard to vote. How, 50 years ago?
Yeah.
Not that long ago.
And when the women were doing that, it was hard, because they were being put in prison, they were being outcasts in their families, they were getting beat up, and the fact that they were as a collective still standing, still marching, still moving, said we deserve this place. You know,
It was actually 100 years ago. I want to correct myself. Yeah.
uh,
But it still feels like it was 50 years ago. And the gap hasn't closed that much in the
well,
last
in
50 years.
fact, we're watching things telling us that, trying to push us back energetically and in terms of our choice. Because I think what those women were marching for was our choice to be heard, our choice to bring our gifts, our choice to have a seat at the table.
Yes. Yes. And before it was just make the table and walk away.
Yes.
Yes. Now we get to sit down. It really has I was listening to someone speak very eloquently on the history over the last 100 years where we had Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation, and then 100 years later, we had Martin Luther King saying the same thing about freedom and equality. And then 50 years later, we have the Black Lives Matter movement. And now the significance of that timeline was the gap is starting to shorten. Maybe the voices are being heard more now because of social media and how we are connected. And so it is safer to have our voices heard behind the guise of social media. And I wanted to ask you about that.
Well, I think it's a yes and maybe,
Right,
because
right,
I think it's we have the rights and the platform to bring our voices and to bring our opinions and to bring our thoughts, but so do other people that aren't necessarily kind when you do that. And so I think it takes great courage to be willing to step out in that way and know that there will be people that may come after you or troll or whatever it is that they do, that is uncomfortable. But I think our continuing to move, our continuing to speak, our continuing to stand is the call, because I think it's the time for us to emerge and call forth interconnectivity and the understanding that we're one human family, and that what happens to one happens to all. So I think however we describe that, however we deliver it, I think it's important, and not everybody's going to love it.
right. That's why this is such a hot topic right now. Does my voice matter? And that's an interesting choice of a topic of the title of your book, because you're actually asking the question. If you look at something like the women's rights that were just taken away with abortion rights, does all of that marching matter? It's a good
Yeah.
question.
Well, yeah. And I think what I love that's happening now is that people are coming out into the streets and saying, no, 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 no. We understand you're sitting in a seat of power, but that's not okay. It's not okay, because we all deserve the right to choose how we treat our bodies, who we love, how we create families. We get to choose. And so I think that we're watching two paradigms kind of clash, an old paradigm and an old way of being, and one that says, how about we all have freedom? How about we all get to step into the truth of who we've come here to be and express the way we want to? I'm teaching some classes, and I've got so many non-binary young people in there now who are saying, I want to, I don't want to be in a box. I want to be me.
Yes, yes. Um, it's awesome because I have a 19-year-old. She calls her Gen Z, right?
Mhm.
And it's she said the one thing she loves about her generation, and this was really a cool moment because we were walking along the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and it was so classic. And it was really just interesting. And she said, "What I love about my generation is that we're not afraid to speak our truth, and we don't care what others think." She's like, "It's so freeing." And I listened to that and I thought that was such a great thing to say. We don't care. This is the best thing about our generation. We don't care. And so those are our youth, those are our teenagers, those are our our generation that's coming up into decision making power soon. But it's our generation and our parents' generation. It's hundreds of years of voice suppressed, of voice
Right.
suppressed.
Well, and I think that what your daughter said is what we're being called to step into. Can you be fearless? Can you still be kind? Can you be loving? Can you be caring? But can you not give your power away by changing your way of operating to fit someone else's opinion or need or desire for you? So not caring to me means I can listen to you, but I get to choose.
Yes. Well, I love how you break down the voice itself. So, what does the voice mean to you? I mean, you are also a musical artist. So, the voice can mean many things to you.
Yeah, I mean, most people, when they think of the voice, they think of the sound that comes through the larynx and, and or speaking. But what I think it is it's expression. How do you express? Do you write? Do you sing? Do you dance? Do you teach? How does your full expression want to come onto the planet so that you are creating impact, light, love, and inviting people into the conversation of the heart?
Yes, and it can also be used to set powerful intentions. It can be used to speak about what you want. It very powerfully I feel when you voice what you want, it gets even stronger. And I think that's written somewhere in a biblical text somewhere. But it is when you voice it, has a certain vibration that's attached to it.
Right. Yeah. In the beginning was the word.
Thank you. Thank you for that reference.
Well, you know, but and the
I knew
thing
it was in there somewhere, Cynthia. I talk about so many religions, I lose track. Yes, in the beginning there was the word. Yes.
so the thing is that, you know, a vision lives within us, but when you speak it, it begins to take form and seeds get planted. And then the more you nurture that spoken word, that vision, that dream, the more it begins to blossom. And so that to me is exciting because that's creativity. And I think creativity is a major part of finding our voices. It's like, how do you want to create? How do you want to co create with the divine? How do you want to bring light and joy and laughter and freedom to the planet?
Yes. Now, was there a time once, Cynthia, where your voice wasn't heard?
Okay.
Which
Can we
one?
a bunch of them? Yeah.
Yep, you
Yeah.
can.
Well, when I grew up, we were on welfare. We lived in Minneapolis, 6 blocks from where George Floyd was killed.
Wow.
And so, it was keep your head down, stay out of trouble. Um, um, don't stir the pot. And so you were trying to figure out, well, when you go to church and they tell you you're a child of God, but when you go out, you can't talk and you can't
Right.
make trouble. So you're confused. And so I kept feeling like, well, where I could do it is I could get educated. I could do well in school. I could be in clubs and those kinds of things. But my trajectory throughout my life was trying to find the harmony in who am I? Do I belong? Is my presence on this planet even matter? And so that was the journey. So it was up and down, and I made some interesting choices, kissed a few frogs, and just really um, tried to find my way. But it wasn't until someone said to me, I was in a contest and they said, "Why do you think you've won all these times?" And I said, "Oh, because I've worked hard and I've trained and all this." And they said, "Yes, but really, you won because we got to see you." And in the thing that you just did, you were missing. You were trying to impress us. Why don't you go back to who you are? That was like huge
Wow.
because she was right. I was trying to do it right. I was trying to prove I was okay. That's what I was doing. And when he said that, it was like, oh, stop pushing. Stop trying to force it. Just be you.
Mm, mm. What were you singing?
No, actually, I was on a show called Star Search,
Oh,
and I was in the finals.
yes. Yes. Now, I remember that show. Did that make a difference in your performance?
Totally did. I won,
Oh
and
my
and
gosh.
they handed me $100,000 on television,
Oh
and
my God.
uh, and I'm completely sure that because when I got up from that conversation with the producer and I went to my dressing room, I was with the girl singer that was in the finals, and I said, I need to do a prayer. Will you do a prayer with me that I can go out there and be me? She said, I want the same thing. She,
Oh,
I mean, but it was because I wasn't constricted by trying.
but to really go into a national stage like that and be the most vulnerable
Yeah.
that you could be, how did that change your life?
It was scary, and I stepped out anyway. And I think that that's the call for all of us. It's like, Brene Brown says vulnerability is a gift, right? So if can you feel what you're feeling? Can you be scared? And can you understand that by standing in that energy, in that field, and bringing your best self forward, game changer.
What does that require, though, Cynthia? Is it a letting go? Is it not trying so hard? What does that actually mean, not trying so hard? What does that mean?
For me, it means non attachment. If I bring my best self, if I do the best that I can do, if I show up fully, then I can trust that the universe has my back and is going to take that energy and lift it.
Yes. And you have to have experience with doing that enough times. And that's why I also love in your book you talk about having your voice heard doesn't have to just be through speaking or singing. It could be through dancing. It could be through the clothes that you wear. It could be through design. Any way, storytelling. It could be anything that brings that expression of you forward, right?
Yes. The thing is like it's like if we live in a creative universe and we are manifestations of that universe, then we are creative. And so then however we want to bring that, however whatever lights us up and feeds our soul and brings forth our passion, that's it. I mean, I love clothes, and so that's going to be part of my expression no matter what. And
Yep.
and it could be that you are the best parent, that you bring so much love and so much light to your children that you remind them who you are. That's bringing your voice.
Mm, that's a great way of explaining it. That is a great way. And it could be anything that you do. If you love athletics, that's your expression. If you love rock hunting, you know, your hobby, finding crystal, gems, that's your expression. It could be so many different things. It doesn't just have to be speaking. Some people are introverts and don't want to necessarily get out there on a stage and speak. It feels better for them to be writing
That's right.
or listening.
That's right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's actually
And I think
interesting.
if you tap into that, then you cease to worry about what's next because you're present. You're totally present in the moment with what is fulfilling.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So we ask, does my voice, or you ask, does my voice matter? Is there more to that title when you're talking with people and the people that you've spoken with in the book? Can you share with us some stories about people's voices mattering?
Well, yeah. So the question is really about, do you get that you're essential? Do you get that you're a unique imprint? Do you get that you are unrepeatable? Therefore, your presence here, your full presence here, makes a difference. And I will tell you, I was recently working with a woman who um, is actually in her 70s and is having challenges with her children. And we were trying to talk about why was she having, and she said that they keep complaining that all she does is want to talk about herself and want to come in and fix.
Mhm.
And so I said, okay, well, how old is the part that wants to talk all the time and say, what about me, what about me? And she said, 5, because in my family I wasn't allowed to speak. I had to just keep doing things to make people happy. And
Did,
so that's one example of us saying, well, what if you matter? What if you nurture that little part that says, what about me? And you don't need to get it from the outside.
did you talk to my mother? Was that who you were? I've actually been having the same exact conversation with her. And here's what I found to be interesting is my mother's 80 and she has this desire to impart her wisdom on the generations behind her. And at the same time, those generations don't want to hear it because they think it's old wisdom and not, relevant. And so it's an inherent disconnect and she had the same upbringing of just, you know, the 40s, be seen and not heard. And so it's a very interesting conflict that I see happening with our, 70 and 80-year-old generations is that desire to want to impart wisdom, yet no one wanting to hear it. And
Right.
so I love the way that you pose the question as your title of your book. Does my voice matter? Rather than saying, your voice matters and here's the 10 reasons why. It's the inquiry. And it allows a dialogue to happen and it allows an exchange, a conversation to begin. And wisdom can still be imparted that way, but it is really a great way to talk about something. And I love this story too, because it does bring in a different generation where they can recall moments where their voice didn't matter and they can see what the pain of that was and now try to inspire a new generation to say, yes, it does. You can do this, but it has to be discovered by the individual.
Yeah, and listening. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yes.
listening and becoming curious about who you're sitting in front of, you get to see where they are at and what they're wanting. So the imparting of your wisdom
Hmm.
becomes a dialogue, not a preaching.
Yes, yes, yes. And I mean, you have someone like, Martin Luther King Jr., and he was saying, I have a dream. And then he shared the dream. And if he wouldn't have given that as an example, he wasn't saying you have a dream, you have this desire to this mission. He was saying, I have this and walk along this path with me. And that was something that I also feel could be very huge when using a voice.
Well,
Mm.
yeah, because here's the thing, walk along with me. I mean, when you look at what's happening in the world and you look at Zelensky, right? And you look at Ukraine, he said, what he asked the world, walk along with me to maintain our democracy. And whether you agree with what he did or didn't, the fact that he is at he it wasn't like I'm the one, I need to do this. It was like can we do this as a collective? Can we, that's exciting to me, whether it's on a mass scale like that or whether it's in a community. It's like, can we make a difference together? Can we support each other together? Can we nurture each other together?
What if you don't feel that your voice is ever being heard? Like for someone who does overtalk or does need to control situations and so forth, how can you bring your own authentic self and sense of freedom by speaking your truth to someone that doesn't hear you and won't?
Well, I think you first have to ask yourself, is this mine to do? Is this mine to change? But then I think you get to have a conversation of the heart. For instance, if someone can't hear you, you start with, what I want most is to connect with you. What I want most is to be closer to you. And I feel like the way in which we're communicating is not supporting that. What do you need? And then I'll tell you what I need.
Well, we have a very divided country. I
Yes,
mean, and the example that you just gave of Zelensky, he's never going to be heard by Putin. You
right,
know, there's situations that you are just not going to penetrate with your voice.
right. But your actions still can make a difference. You know what I'm saying? If someone thinks they're right and righteous, you can't hold up enough signs or speak enough or beat on the door enough for them to get it.
Right.
But you can be in integrity with your soul. You can be in integrity with what you believe. And what I think is important about bringing your voice is there kindness there? Is there loving there? Is
Mm.
there honesty and integrity there? Everybody's not going to agree with, everybody's not going to get on the bandwagon with you, but you can make a difference because people can feel authenticity. It's a
Yes.
frequency.
Yes. You know, I was talking with a friend earlier today and we were talking about authenticity. And it was I've spoken with women who have spoken their truth and they'll say something really meaningful to them and they've said it and there it is, it's out there. And then I ask them, well, what did the other person say? And they say, I don't even know. The reason is they're so detached from the outcome. The most important thing was just to speak it and just to say it. And sometimes it doesn't even matter. The other person could say anything and it won't even matter because that act of just saying and speaking your truth about something that's probably really uncomfortable and awkward and controversial is usually the 99% of it. It doesn't really matter what the reaction of the other person is.
No, but using your voice is a courageous act,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
people get it or not, because it frees something in you
Mhm.
that you've had the willingness to step forward and be brave enough to speak your truth. The thing is like, let's go back to your daughter. You can't care how they receive it or respond to it. If you
Yeah.
are being authentic and kind, well then what they choose is their choice.
Right. Right. And it's usually your vision and your authentic voice that you are trying to communicate. It doesn't necessarily have to do with the other people. And I'm of course not talking about judgment or racism or hate or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something that is a vision of yours that keeps you moving and that could cause a huge shift maybe in your life or the lives of others. I'm talking about something humanitarian, just to clarify. But it really causes an enormous amount of freedom. It really does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to think so hard and plan so hard and strategize so hard to make it right.
Oh my gosh. All those conversations that do you ever do this where you wish you would have said something to someone and then you go to the next best person and you go, and I should have said this, and then I should, and you have the whole conversation you should have had with the other person with that person.
Exactly right.
Yeah. How many times have I done that? And And then the person says to me, well, did you say that to them? And I'll be like, no. Well, yeah. What's the point? To feel enough of saying that and speaking that is important. Now, what about when it comes to things like artistry or drawing or poetry or some other form of freedom of expression in terms of the arts, which you're very familiar with? Do you have a lot of experience with that?
Yeah, and let me just tell you something that just happened.
Okay.
So these artists called the Brothers Corin, and I didn't know them. I was introduced to them from Catherine Woodward Thomas, who had done a jazz album.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done an album in 8 years, and I don't read music. I kind of download music. And so when she says, well, you should meet them, I'm thinking, well, that'll be nice. I'll have a conversation, but it's probably nothing's going to happen. And we get on there, and it was really like we had come from another planet and found each other here. And it was like this, it was like, and um, and they said, have you ever thought that there was something deep inside of you that hadn't been expressed musically? And I said, yes. And they said, well, let's find it. So we spent 9 months, and they said, do not sit at a keyboard. Do not have a pencil writing down what you think it should be. Whatever comes in, pick up your recorder and record what comes in. So the 7 songs on the album all came that way. When they were coming through and we were starting to record, I wasn't even really getting that it mirrored the book, that it was really about me finding myself, bringing my essence forward, honoring who I am, standing in the truth of whatever I'm feeling. And so it was striking to be in that studio with them and to realize that this place that I've always felt like was a little undercover or whatever, was fully present.
That is beautiful. So you're really not making up words for a song. You're using the words that inspired you that then became a song.
That's right.
Well, 7 songs.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it's really one of the things that the first thing they asked me was, in your musical life, who has inspired you? Let's just
Mm.
write them down. And from my perspective, what I did was say, okay, y'all come in and help me bring my voice forward. And I really think that that's kind of what happened.
Mm. Yes. That's interesting. Now, what about using your voice when it's not popular? So, if you are maybe a part of an organization that is not run the way you want it to be, and you say something that's going to really cause a ruckus, maybe enemies, what if it's
Mhm.
a relationship and you're terrified to speak up? Where do you draw the line of saying something and not saying something?
Okay, well, both the things you said, I've been there, done that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I will tell you something that happened. I was in an organization and I was in the boardroom, and we were having to make a decision, and one of the board members, who actually was very influential, wanted us to make a decision out of fear, because they were afraid something would happen. And what I was watching is my body. I really believe the body has a language, and my body was getting more and more tense and getting more and more constricted. And I was watching the same thing happen at the table, but nobody was speaking. And I got to the place where my throat started to close.
Hmm.
And I spoke up and I said, are you saying that we should make this decision out of fear? At which point the CEO looked at me like, what the hell are you doing? and so we voted and we finished. And so afterwards I went to the CEO and I said, I want to know if we're okay. And he said, you are, one of the things I love about you is that you're a person of integrity. He said, the only thing I would like to tell you is learn to speak your truth with a velvet hammer.
I do understand that, though. Sometimes you've held it inside for so long that it just gets blurted out, and sometimes very strong. And it could be projection or past wounds or whatever that also come along with that blurting out. I think it's the pendulum that's eventually going to swing closer to the middle, and it's something to be very aware of. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you've got to get clear. If you're in a place where consistently what's happening around you is out of integrity with your soul, it's not the right place for you. You're being quiet. It isn't just about saying it's okay what they're doing there. What you're saying to yourself is it's okay that I don't deserve to be in a place that is in alignment with who I say I am and what I value and who I've come here to be.
Right, right. And that's interesting because sometimes we detach or dissociate from something that's being said around us and we let it slide. And then the next time it happens, it hits you the wrong way. And you say to yourself, I really got to say something the next time this happens. And then the next time it happens, you get that choking feeling like this is wrong. This doesn't work in my body. And that's the time or the time before that you have to trust. And you talk a lot about this in the book about the detachment, consistency, and non attachment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to really be consistent with saying something so you don't blow up like a fuse, and that you're not attached to the outcome, because once you speak your truth, freedom happens.
That's right.
It's an amazing experience, and I know anyone viewing this or listening to this has had that experience a few times in their life, or maybe many times. Maybe you're a very direct person and you're wondering what we're even talking about. But that's good for you because there's a lot of people that don't have that experience of constantly having their voices heard, as a female especially. So is there something that, like a tool that you could give us for that time where it's super uncomfortable and you really want to say something, to
Mm-hmm.
say it without that punch behind it? What do you
Well, the first
suggest?
the first thing I would say is pause, and I would say check in with your body. What are you feeling in your body? What's really being triggered here? Is it something old that isn't doesn't even have anything to do with in the room? Or is it some kind of pattern that keeps repeating itself that because it's asking you to address it? And then I would ask, what do I really need to say here that is going to make me feel like I'm being authentic? And can I trust that whatever the response is, it's in order. It's in divine order for whatever has to happen here, and I'll be okay.
And the consistency piece is something you were just talking about, right? Is staying consistent with your awareness around using your voice, right?
That's right. Well, and practicing, I mean, you don't have to wait till you get in some big boardroom or some, big relationship thing. You can be practice in your everyday life, in your work environments, with your children. What you can practice so that when you finally get to a big moment, you know, it's a natural state of being.
Mm, it is. And I think once you do that, you don't go back. In
That's
my
right.
experience, once you start speaking your truth and saying something, it becomes like anything, it becomes a practice, a pattern, right? I mean, that's
It does. Even if it in the moment the fear comes in or the doubt comes in, because you've worked that muscle, then it's easier to step forward no matter what you're feeling and express.
it really is. I mean, you get addicted to the freedom of it. You do. Now, can somebody's voice be satisfied if they're just not just journaling, but if they're journaling, if they're doing meditation? Is that another form of having your voice heard, or is that more internal?
Totally. There's a professor in Austin whose name is Penny Baker, and he did all this research and wrote this book about the power of writing. That not only was it freeing emotionally, but it had impact on the physiology, on the mental and emotional states of being. And he said that if you write for 15 minutes a day, and not just venting, but really what you're feeling and what you're experiencing and letting that energy out, it begins to have impact on all levels. So definitely. And meditation or visioning, you get to go in and you get to tap into mm, the quantum field, the field of possibilities and potentialities, and you get to begin to learn how to dialogue with it and to get answers.
Hmm. Why this book now? Why do you feel that now is the right time to release a book like Does
Mm.
Your Voice Matter?
Because I think humanity is in this question. I really believe, doesn't matter if you're old or young or black or white or Latino or Native, it doesn't matter. We're all asking that. And I think the pandemic is what started it. It's like it sat humanity down. You can't go out, you can't work, you can't do what you've always done. So now you got to be with you. And that would be a question that would, does my voice matter? Do I matter?
I think we have just tipped the iceberg on that one. I mean, we're seeing it by the fact that people are using their voice so much more collectively. They don't want to go back into the office. They don't want to go back to the grind. We don't want to be polluting the planet with driving back and forth all the time. We don't want to be taking lower wage. I mean, these are so many things that the power of the people is coming up now. I think this is one of the biggest movements of having your voice heard. Me Too, Black Lives Matter, workers, government, you're seeing it literally everywhere. And the great thing about this network, the Free Speech TV, is that very thing. We have this incredible right, this incredible amendment of freedom of speech. What have you had the opportunity to dive into that?
Well, no, I mean, there's so many layers to freedom of speech that sometimes my mind it starts boggling. But the thing is that it is a gift. And so the question I think for each person is, how are you using that gift? Are you using it for transformation? Are you using it for healing, or are you using it for division? How are you using that gift that we've all been given? And I think that collective thing that you're talking about is important. It's like people want respect, and people want to be appreciated, and people want to feel as if they're seen and heard. And so collectively, we're saying, pay attention to this. I'll do a
Right.
great resignation. Pay attention to this. I don't know. I just feel like it is a gift for us, but I think we are asking, how do we use it in consciousness?
Right. It can be used for words. I've always looked at the word, WORD, and if you put an S in front of it, it could be a sword, so it could cut people.
Right.
So if you look at that, words can be powerful or they can be used as a sword, and it depends on how you use that speech. And it can be for good, like we're seeing many people marching in the streets and having their voices heard and making it matter. And it does take repetition, 100 years, 50 years. It takes repetition, but I feel also with the power of social media that it is amplified. People's voices are amplified now, and they can get instant feedback as to whether that there's agreement with their voice, or there's disagreement, or there's starting a dialogue, or things like that. I do that, a lot of posts like that, where I ask people what's inspiring them, and I get the most beautiful feedback. I love that. You can really elicit conversations with people from all over the world, and it doesn't really matter what generation, what level. You can find that level of speech that instantly bonds you, and you get an instant relationship with that, and you can tell your stories through speech too. There's a lot that comes with this, and I find it a very timely topic that you brought out a question like this, an inquiry in the form of a book. Does your voice matter? Because it's an individual experience for people to learn. It didn't then, and I got in trouble for it at this time, but it does now.
That's right. That's right. And it does, and it means that all you have to deal with is this present moment. Can I
Mm,
own my voice in this moment?
yeah. Yeah. That's what brings you joy today. That's what you mentioned. What brings you joy today in this moment? I wanted to ask you also about how to handle people like bullies and like cyberbullying and so forth that have taken this maybe a step too far and really hurt people with their voices.
You know, I'm not an expert on that, but one of the things that I have witnessed is that um, some people have just, for their own peace of mind, have just severed their accounts or whatever. Others have taken a stand for themselves and says, "You will not shut me up. You will not. You will not take away my voice by your bullying." So I think it depends on where you are in this moment. Is what you're speaking so important for you that you feel like you need to take a stand? I don't know. I mean, I feel fortunate that I haven't had that. I mean, I've had a few people say some interesting things, but never like a troll that's like come after me, you know. But I have witnessed certain people that's happened to, that refuse to take a step back, that refuse to give up their voice and their power, and spoken very clearly, "I do not give my power to you."
And that is actually a good thing. That is a great thing to say to someone who might be in that place of bullying you and your reaction, I do not give my power to you by responding or even, just not responding. But sometimes it's better to use your voice. You actually feel more complete if you have. That's a great phrase to say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
On a lot of different levels, because "I do not give my voice to you" can look like a lot of different things in a lot of different ways, but it comes from you being so in your center that you won't be moved or intimidated to step away from what you truly believe.
Yes. And even though you're not asking for people's opinions when you say what you believe, you get them. And
Yes, you do.
it's just the byproduct of speaking your truth. And a lot of, as I said, our younger generation doesn't have as much of a problem with that. But the older you get, or if you're a professional or whatever, sometimes it's really hard to get the courage to come out and say something that you really feel means a lot to you. And I think we're just in that time of more permission. And isn't that great that we have more permission to say things of how we feel and our opinions and so forth? And also, the same thing if there is abuse happening or verbal abuse or emotional abuse, it's time to say something. It's no longer time to tolerate.
That's right.
And that's okay. And it's just it's a fine line though. That's a very fine line.
Well, yeah, and I think that if we can remember that every time someone takes a step, brings their voice, and expresses, if we can celebrate them, it anchors their courage muscle. It says, "Yeah, okay, someone saw it, someone's standing with me, someone is honoring what I'm doing." And I think for me, that has been one of the greatest gifts of my life, is being seen by people, and being supported and celebrated when I took a leap of faith, or when I stepped out in a place that was scary.
Yes. And especially when it comes out to stepping up for other people, where you see someone else being abused, someone else being emotionally tormented. You want to speak up for them because you want to empower them. But that's a fine line though, Cynthia.
Well,
Have you ever been?
you can't interfere in someone's relationship. They have to choose. But if they choose to take a step for them, I mean, I did a lot of work supporting a place where women who had been abused, who had gotten away, I clothes and different stuff for them, and the whole thing was honoring that they chose for them, for their children, to get out and make a different life for them. And I think those moments of celebrating help people stand in their bravery.
Yes, and if you if you don't speak out for them, which you might not have permission to do, or you might put them in greater harm by doing
Yes,
so, that act of getting out and doing what's best for their children is using their voice, right?
100%.
Hmm.
100%.
Never thought about it that way. Of course, it's the equivalent because otherwise it's just too dangerous.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yep. And they really won't be heard. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier is sometimes you have to detach yourself from the outcome of being heard.
That's right. Right. Because not everybody's going to get what you're saying or how you're delivering it.
Mm-mm.
That's why
Or
being
care.
or care, right? But
Hmm.
being in integrity with who you are and what you know resonates with your soul is what's important, because it's being delivered to the universe, not just to an individual.
Right. So it doesn't necessarily matter who it lands on or how it's landed. It's how you've spoken your truth. And not requiring a response is also important because you've got that, you've spoken your truth and you don't need somebody to respond back. You don't need that. It's more so about your personal freedom and speaking your truth.
That's right.
Do you do this on a daily basis? Like we talked about this being a muscle. Is it something that you could empower yourself to do every day in the smallest of ways to get more comfortable with having your voice feel heard?
I think it's essential. I
What
think
do you do?
I whether it's with my husband or my children or my friends or my clients, I I I bring that authentic voice to the plate, to the table, because I think it builds trust. It's like if they know I'm going to bring that, then they have permission to bring it, and then we get to whatever, even if it's a dance of something that we're going through, we both know that we have the permission and the safety to bring that energy. So I try to do that in every aspect of my life because I feel better and I feel freer.
Yes. Yep. That's what it is about. Well, I just thank you so much for this. This has been really enlightening. The name of the book is Does My Voice Matter? And that's a great question to be in constantly, is asking that question, does my voice matter here? Does it matter here? And finding the answer is the most valuable part of all this, is finding that answer to that question is going to be individual for everyone. You can get it on Amazon, wherever. The website is the same, doesmyvoicematter.com, right?
Yes.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Cynthia, for your contribution in every way, for the books and your voice and your music and everything that you do to raise the empowerment of humanity. Much, much appreciated.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm honored to walk this path with you.
Oh, me too. Me too. This has been wonderful. And I also want to thank everyone for listening. You can also, if you heard something that you liked here and you want to inspire someone to use their voice or to have that same level of passion around using your voice, please share this with anyone that you listen that wants to hear it. You can share it on the podcast, and they make it really easy on all the podcast platforms to just share it. And also, if you have a story in you that you feel that you want to get out or realize at a deeper level, that's another form of self expression. And I have recorded an incredible course that helps you realize the importance of your story and how to discover your story and how to tell your story, your origin story from a healed place so that you can not only heal yourself, but heal others every time you tell it. And then just dive right into your purpose that way, because it really is a life of purpose when you impact others with your own story. So you can check that out at theawareshow.com/story course. The website is theawareshow.com/story course, and that's available to you at any time on demand as well. Thank you again for being a part of this conversation. Your energy, your exchange, everything just makes these interviews happen the right way. And I am Lisa Garr, and until next time, I invite you to stay aware.